Hi everyone, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. Join me in learning a very simple way to bezel a bunch of different sizes of cabs. In this bold blossoms pendant, you're going to be using some very simple stringing techniques to create a nice form-fitting bezel. If you do need any supplies, because you didn't get the best box the last 2 months, which joined those supplies together to make this pendant, you can check out the links below in the description to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Not only can this be used with a cabochon, but it can also be used with a rivoli as well. Gather up your materials, get out your bead mats, and let's get started. So we're going to begin our bold blossoms pendant with some 8/0 and 11/0 seed beads. We're going to create our starting row here that is going to be the base for our cabochon to sit in. This is really, really simple and very forgiving to make it for a larger size if you want to go larger than 20 millimeter. I have on some .006 wildfire beading thread with a size 12 needle, a collection of 14 8/0s and 14 11/0 seed beads, separating them out every other. I started with an 8/0, so I made sure that I ended with an 11. I'm going to circle this out to make a loop by going through the 8, 11, 8, 11, coming out here through my third 11/0 seed bead, just to kind of work as an anchor. When I pull the thread tight then, that's going to round that out. Coming out that bead of the 11/0, I'm going to add 3 more 11/0 beads onto my needle. Take that needle and thread back through the 11 that you're coming out of. So my thread's coming out the right hand side. I'm going to go into the left and then through the next 8/0 and over out the next 11. Give it a nice little tight pull. Make sure there's not a lot of extra thread showing. And you can see that sits up like a little bit of a picot trim or the top of a crown. I'm going to repeat this, you guessed it, 14 times, because I'm going in here and I'm repeating this for every single one of those 11/0 seed beads from that starter ring. So you can see how easy it is. 3 beads go on, back through the bead that you're coming out of, through the next 2 beads, so you're exiting the next 11/0, and there you have it. Again, we're going to repeat this 14 times. So I have this grouping of 3 seed beads sitting on the top of 11/0 for every 11/0 from that starter row. Once you get finished with that last group of 3, I took my thread and needle through the next 8/0 and the next 11/0, which is the first one that we did that little crown point on. You can see how simple that was to go around and add those 3 beads. From here, we're going to step up, meaning we are going to go to the top of that little trim that we did. So we're coming out of bead number 2 of that group of 3 that we went through. We're going to catch on to all of those top beads. So all of those points basically of the crown is what we are going to catch on to. In order to do so, I want you to add 1 11, 1 8, 1 11 onto your needle. You're going to take your needle and thread back through that same 11 that you're coming out of, just like we did along the baseline here. That 8's going to sit towards the top there. And then we're going to add an 8 and sew through to the next top 11. Once again, 11, 8, 11. Sew back through that 11 that your thread is coming out of, making that little picot trim to the top. Add an 11, sew through, add an 8, sew through the next 11. So you can see I've been doing this now, 3 times. Here's my 4th, going back through that 11. Nice tight pull. Add an 8 and go through the next 11. So you can see basically what we're doing is a mirror image of our first row of beads. I have 3 done. I'm going to continue around till I have all 14 of my peaks with the extra 3 beads sitting at the top. As you finish up your second row here, you're just going to add 1 more 8/0 after the last little picot trim. Go through the 11 that your thread was originally coming out of and close up that loop. That will give you those 14 of your 8 seed beads on the outer edge, and those gold seed beads will sit nicely in there, contained in that unit. Just like we did previously, we're going to step up. So I'm going to go through the next 11 and make sure that my thread is exiting out the 8 that sits to the top. You can see it naturally wants to start kind of caving in towards the center. We're going to utilize that as we bring it around to capture in our cabochon. Now we're going to do the same thing for a third rotation. Coming out of that 8 seed bead, I'm going to grab 1, 2, and 3, all 11 go back through that 8, adding the 11 sitting on top of the 8, and then 1 more 11 and sewing through to the next 8 seed bead. Same thing, add 3 11s, circle around, back through the 8 your thread is coming around with. And you'll notice that you want to give a nice tight pull because we want this starting to turn in on itself. Add the 11 and sew through the next 8 seed bead. Once again, 3 seed beads get added, back through the 8 that you're coming out of, give that nice tight pull, 11 goes on. So I'm going to continue to do this the whole way around the circle, and as I do so and get further into the design, I'm going to start just holding my cabochon there because you can see what we're going to do is fold that over the top and link that third bead or that second bead as well, just like we have been doing. So I'm going to continue around, adding in 3 11 to the top and 1 11 between each of my 8 seed beads. So as you get around here, you can see I've pushed my cab into place and I'm pulling on my thread, not my needle, after each one of my 8 seed beads to make that pull in towards the cabochon itself. Adding 1 last 11, I'm going to sew through the 8 seed bead that I started with. You can see that's starting to pull in there. And then just like we've been doing, I'm going up to come out of bead number 2. So it's a very repetitive pattern with a very nice fit. Like I said, it can be really, really altered so that way it can fit whatever size cabochon you need it to in your design. From here, we're going to get ready by folding in all of those 11 seed beads so we can go around and sew them together and add that nice line of thread around to get the cabochon to stay in place. Coming out of that top seed bead, I'm going to add 1 11 onto my thread and needle, and then I'm going to sew through the next top bead there. That second bead, add an 11. So this time we're not doing any of the picot trim or adding any extra beads swinging around. We're just simply adding 1 11 between each one of my little points that I did that sit on top of the 8 11 gets added, sew through the next point, and you can see how these are starting to turn in on the cap itself. 11 gets added, and you're going to continue the whole way around, pulling these in towards the center. Going through here, it's very quick. Once we go through here and do this once, we're actually going to go through all of these beads a second time. Whenever I get to the top of a bezel like this, I want to make sure that it's nice and tight and that I kind of move it around and make sure the fit goes well, because the most pressure and the most likely place that you'll have an issue with your thread is right at the front. So I don't want my cabochon to fall out, so I'm going to just reinforce it. So on goes an 11 each space, finishing 11, go through that, and now again I'm just going to weave back through all of these beads one more time. So you can see how I'm taking my thread just right along that last 11 loop. You can see how perfectly it fits in here. There's a little bit of extra thread showing, but as we go through here, massage it around and pull, you can see how that tightens it up. That second row of thread really does work marvels to get the thread and that tight fit to sit in. Let's see that nice tight fit. After you get your second row of thread through that interior, most interior line of seed beads, I want you to come out through one of the 11 that sits at the peak of the 8. And then we're going to get to the outer row to embellish. The embellishment that can be done is endless, literally endless. So if you want to put those bright check rounds on the outside, if you want to keep it just nice and simple, you can do so with those bold flowers kind of popping out at you. It almost looks like a display window. I'm going to now take my thread and needle from that original down through my 11 that sits after it and out through one of my 8s. Now you'll notice that we have 3 rows of 8s. The original back row, then the outer back row, and then the one that's sitting on the exterior. This one sitting on the exterior here, we're going to skip over. I want that to sit empty. So I'm going to sew down through my piece here toward the second row of 8 OC beads and come on out. That second row of 8 OC beads is where we are going to add our embellishments. Pick up whatever beads you want to kind of make it yours. And I'm going to work with those nice, bright check faceted rounds. Once you're out through that 8 OC bead, you can see I've already begun. You're going to put on 2 of your 11 OC beads, followed by 1 of your check faceted rounds in the 4mm, followed by 2 more 11 OC beads. Skip over the next 8 and sew through the next one in line. Once again, 2 on, 1 of my 4s, 2 seed beads, skip over the next one, and sew through. Now as you come around here, you'll notice that when you finish up, you have on 6 total check faceted rounds. If I add another one here, it's not going to quite fit because of the odd count. So what I'm going to do is we are going to create a nice kind of ribbon effect. On go 2 more 11 O's, 2 more, or 1 4mm, 2 more 11 O's. Coming out the front of that 8O, I'm going to skip to the back, so skipping the next 8O, skip to the back of the 8O that sits with the first 4mm round on top. I'm going to sew through that 8O there from the back toward the front and bring that around. Again, 2 11s, 1 4mm, 2 11s. I'm currently coming out the back, currently coming out the front of that bead. I'm going to go to the back of the next 8O in line that I'm supposed to sew through, skipping over the next one and going to the back. See what's starting to happen is it looks like it's wrapped around because you're going from the front to the back. Again, 2 11s, 1 4, 2 11s. Coming out the front here, I'm going to go to the back 8O that sits below that check glass and sew from the back toward the front. Tighten it up. So see how you're getting that nice kind of ribboning effect. You're going to continue the whole way around, filling in so that all of your 8 OC beads have the check glass sitting around. This is going to get you that kind of bold blossoming look, looking like that flower is just popping right out from the design. Continuing around, going through from the front to the back to get kind of that braided effect. 2 more to go. Again, front side there, back side here. Give a nice tight pull, and then this is my last one. From the front to the back and out. That finishes that up, and that takes care of that odd count of beads and how you're going to work to get your check glass beads in that spiraling section there. You can see it's a nice little way to kind of cover it up. Now all we need to do is create our bail. We're going to do the bail with a nice square stitch, again keeping it nice and easy style, going from the top toward the back of the pendant. Flipping the piece over along the back, I'm coming out of one of the 8 OC beads there in the second line of 8s, and I added to my thread and needle a total of 10 of my 11 OC beads. I'm going to sew back into that same 8 OC bead, which is going to force that kind of to sit like a loop. Grabbing your thread and needle then, go back through the first 5 of those 10 seed beads. So there I'm through 3, 4, and 5, and out. You can see that's going to, once you have those numbers even, force them to kind of lay right next to one another. It's a very, very simple bail technique. From here, I'm going to add again another 5 for one side, 5 for the other side, so a total of 10. Let all 10 there, drop down next to the last one. So back through the 5. So I'm coming out the 5 on the left, I'm adding 10, sewing back down through the 5 on the right. That's going to make those also sit right on top of there. Skipping over the 8/0 seed bead, go right back to the left-hand side, and this time sew through 10 seed beads. The original 5, and then 5 on the left that you just added. Give a nice tight pull. Get that thread end out of there if you need to. And you can see my bail starting to take shape. I'm going to do this another time, and then we're going to add it so it can turn over itself and create a nice bail for a pendant to sit in. Again, 5 more for one side, 5 for the other side. Down through the first 5 on the left, on the right side, and out. That forces them to sit there. I'm going to skip over to the left side, so we're just doing a ladder stitch here, and sew back up through the 5 from the previous grouping and the 5 that I just added. And that gets them right next to one another there. We're going to turn this over now, and we're going to connect it to the back as well to create that little bail. To do so, once again, 5 more get added. Rather than adding the other 5 right away, we're going back to that original 8/0 seed bead and sewing through it. Once you're through that 8/0, 5 more get added. And you come around back up through the 5 above on the opposite side. So you can see we just kind of made a figure 8, looped around to complete our nice, simple, and easy bail. The bail I have completely to the back of the piece. That way when I sit the bail, or sit the pendant on, all of those check beads are going to go to the front of the design. Last thing I need to do is take my needle and thread back down through the bail on the opposite side. Run through those 10 seed beads. And then work my thread down, sewing through the piece, toward the original thread, tying off the 2 thread ends and creating a nice knot. The reason I call this the pendant the bold blossom is because that orange is going to be a bold color, but that cab in the middle really, really pops with these beautiful colors. Thanks so much for joining me in the creation of this bold blossom pendant. Hopefully it opened up your eyes to a little bit of ways that you can use basic stitches to create a nice bezel without a lot of hassle. Remember, if you do need any supplies, you can check out the links below to shop with us online. Remember, also you can give a little thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet already. If you have other great tricks, tips, techniques that you think people should learn, make sure to share that feedback in the comment section on this video as well. If you've done this video and you've done it for a different size of cabochons or rivolis, make sure to put in the actual description there in those comment section what size and how many count of the original row of seed beads you have. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy making your bold blossoms pendant and learning a new simple way to bezel.